welcome to the MVP Show. Today we're chatting with James Crowter, Managing Director of Clever Dynamics from the United Kingdom. He's been working in the space around 20 years, so he really knows his stuff. He's been an MVP for about 5 or so years. And anyhow, listen with me as we talk about his journey. And we spent a bit of time on this one, even around Business Central, NAV, that type of thing. Remember, as always, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/179. Now let's get on with the show. Hey, James, welcome to the MVP Show.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be invited. Thank you.
Good to have you on the show. Tell us, before we kick off, what part of the world do you come from and what's it famous for?
I come from a little area of the UK called the Black Country, which was famous really for the Industrial Revolution. Coal mining and things like steel. A lot of the first iron bridge was about 10 miles down the road from where I was born. And it was called the Black Country because the smoke was really black and it had an awful lot of pollution before that was really a thing.
So I take it it's cleaned up a bit now.
Oh, it's beautiful now, yes. I guess we've exported that pollution to other parts of the world. But,
let someone else handle it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I was to visit the region, what are the must-see things and to do there?
So we're kind of if you know Birmingham, which is in the middle of the UK, we're just northwest of that. And so around here, you've got things, you've got the potteries, Stoke-on-Trent, where a lot of the famous different China came from. Just down the road, you've got a famous kind of glass making and cutting area. Actually, the bit of Stourbridge, that my hometown, was famous for chain making, even though it's in the middle of the UK. So there's a lot of museums, a lot of history. You can't go 5 minutes without bumping into something that, certainly when Americans come over here, they get really excited because everything's really old and we just regard it as normal.
That's so true. As in the first time I visited the UK and even Europe, I was just could not believe how old some things were. Just mind-blowing. Tell us, what area do you specialize in when it comes to Microsoft?
So I've always been a BizApps person, that my whole career, which is, dare I say, 30 odd years now. And in 1995, I got involved with a little software company that was fresh into the UK called Navision. Probably my lottery win was 2002 when Microsoft bought it, because I developed a degree of expertise in the product, which was mid-market ERP. The year 2000 blew that wide open because everybody had to replace the systems, it seemed like. And then Microsoft jumped on the bandwagon, and we've just ridden that train ever since. So it's SMB focused. BizApps is where I focus, really.
So when you say SMB, give us an idea of kind of size organization or turnover that represents, because everybody in the world, it seems, has a different, in New Zealand, SMB is 1 to 5 staff. Then you're in mid-market straight after that point.
That's confused. You're dead right with that question, because the confusion, you talk of Microsoft, and I think they took about up to 300 seats. And that's probably the definition I would follow. We've got some enormous organizations. Well, the client that I always count turns over 1.2 billion sterling, which is no definition is kind of an SMB in terms of turnover, but actually in terms of number of people, they're substantially less than that. So it is difficult to categorize, but probably it's more a mindset. They're not enterprise organizations. They don't tend to have specialist staff. And so they tend to contract in people like ourselves to kind of run their business operations or build their business operations. and advise them on strategy. And that's what I love about the job, because you get to go in and solve some really cool problems, actually remarkably rapidly. There aren't the restrictions that you sometimes get in the enterprise sector.
Yeah. And so I take it you've moved into the Business Central space as well now?
Oh, yeah, that was kind of, absolutely. That was coming down the track for us, with Ashley as an MVP, kind of was part of the consultation, and they changed the name too many times. I'm almost quite happy with it now. It's better than it could have been. Let me put it that way. And at least we've stuck with the same thing for 3 years now. So it's starting to get recognized, and it's starting to everybody understands it's a rebrand of the Navision Dynamics Nav product as it was for 10 years probably.
So do you see as NAV? And I assume when I say that it's on premise, are you seeing that all swap out and go to Business Central, or do you still maintain customers that are on-prem?
No, I would say 98% of the base is still on-prem. I mean, if you look at what Nav's strength was, it wasn't a product you just took and used. It was a tool set, and so you could make it do anything. And some of the things we made it do, we shouldn't have done. We took it way outside the brief. But because of that customization capability, that doesn't make it particularly. It was its strength, but also its weakness, because for the first 20 years of its life, it was actually hard work to upgrade it. And you've got an awful lot of legacy base which are stuck on old versions. We now have an extension model which does make it easy to upgrade, but you've got a hellish amount of work to actually migrate into that extension model. And so that's going to be a journey that's going to be 5, probably 10 years in the transition for a lot of customers. Not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I bet. But of course, Microsoft would, of course, want everybody over, I assume, on Business Central as soon as possible.
Yes. But, this isn't, you're talking ERP, and, once you've written that first invoice, your opportunity to take any chances has gone. And so nobody takes a risk. Everybody's heard the horror stories. And particularly because it runs their supply chain, it's integrated into everything you could possibly imagine now. And unpicking all those connections, rewriting them to what is effectively, it's a similar language, but it's a different development environment, and putting that up into the cloud. Business Central's still early on its cloud migration. Microsoft will hate me for saying this, but there's a maturity model around cloud apps, right? You went through the whole kind of CRM early days, and some of that was pretty stressful, and it took the old 3 versions, 4 versions before it got to a point where it was really usable. I still think we're on 2 or version 2 with Business Central. So I still think that there's a whole list of things that Microsoft need to do to really make it as effective as how we typically deploy Business Central, which is actually an Azure tenant that's managed with Business Central on top of it. So to the user, they can't really tell the difference if it's on SaaS or if it's on a private cloud. But we get to control.
So IaaS in that scenario.
Yeah, we get to control what happens and when, and that makes a lot of CFOs sleep at night.
Yeah, makes sense. I see that you're listed with 2 companies currently on LinkedIn. So Technology Management and also Clever Dynamics. What's the difference between the 2?
So technology management is a long-term kind of SI here in the UK. So in the SMB space, we've been around for a very long time. 92 we formed, so I've not shown much ambition, Mark, because I've had the same job for an awful lot
27
of
years and
years.
7 months, according to LinkedIn. That's a good wee while.
But we started off as 4 people, and I think we're now around 130. So we've done okay, and we've just ridden that train really. And about 4 years ago, we decided that we were building repeatable solutions and deploying the same IP. And actually, I think like a lot of partners, we suffer from our growth is constrained by lack of skills. So we decided that if we could sell our IP via other partners, that actually might help us grow quicker and easier. So we set up Clever Dynamics, which is the ISV arm. And we really put a kind of wall between the two to kind of say, these people work for the ISV, these people work for the SI, and I'm the one who gets to sit on the wall in between the two.
I like it. That's very cool, and it will lead to some other questions. I take it you're going to Barcelona?
Yes.
You're going to be on the Monday?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm there, I think till the Wednesday evening. So I have to leave a little early, but yeah, absolutely.
I know this is not the right forum for it, but I'd love to pull you onto a panel that I've got running there Monday morning, which is the journey from SI to ISV and how can they coexist in an organization.
I have a few grey hairs as a result of being down that track, but I think a lot of SIs. There's some challenges in that space, move to subscription, all the rest of it. That, again, your community, your home community is a little ahead of mine, if I'm truthful around that. But I think getting a bunch of your own IP into each proposition that you put out to customers is the key to long-term profitability, as we've historically known it. So I think if you're just reselling other people's, then it can be a little bit thin at times. So building your own base is, I think, critical for a lot of SIs.
Yeah, so true. So tell us, what was your MVP journey? How did you come? How long you've been one? I see it's must be 4 or 5 years. But how did you end up becoming an MVP?
I complained to Microsoft that the MVP communities for Nav at the time, Business Central now, they were all developer based. There was a lot of people who could write great code, and there wasn't too many on the panel who were more on the business analysis functionality side. And Microsoft turned around and said, well, if that's a problem, then you better join it then. And so suddenly I got invited to become an MVP, and all about that. It's been a great journey. It gets you invited to things that you wouldn't otherwise be in. It gets you involved in conversations. Great relationship with lots on the product team. Again, Business Central's that little bit smaller, so perhaps it's easier to maintain those one-to-one relationships than perhaps other areas. Doesn't change as much being based in Copenhagen as either.
Yeah, exactly. And do you have a lot of engagement with the product team outside MVP Summit?
Oh yeah. We got a particular challenge we're trying to solve now. So I have a Teams call with 4 of them 3 times a week. It's that regular. They'll just drop an email saying we're thinking of doing this. What's your input? Can you bring anything to it? And sometimes you can say yes, sometimes you can say no, but then they'll jump on a call. So I think we're privileged to have. It's a blessing and a curse, really, isn't it? Because if you have a product team that's that little bit smaller. We haven't seen the wholesale kind of boost that James Phillips has driven in Power Platform and so on. So there's so many new people you can't keep up. but so we're not making, as perhaps you could argue, as fast progress. But on the other hand, you do know that perhaps it's a little bit more tuned and a little bit more honed in some of the progress that it does make.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see that Microsoft's strategy is to move GP ultimately to Biz Central as well?
Yeah, I do. You know, I don't think that's a secret anymore. The GP community are passionate about their product, but I think they have to acknowledge that really, I feel a little sad that they've had most of the resources ripped out, and a lot of the people in Fargo have now been cross-trained into Business Central. So there's a whole sector of the product development team now who sits out in North Dakota.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it must be so hard with the way they acquired, what was it, 4 different kind of finance or ERP type systems. It was AX, NAV, Solomon or SL, and GP, right? Were the 4, and then there was their retail bits and pieces as well. So it's been quite I think, difficult for them to move them together.
I don't think their kind of product strategy is ever going to be a case study, except maybe how not to do it. Dare I say, you've seen that McKinsey might one day do a study on it, I think, but I'm not sure it'll be glowing when you've seen some of the changes relatively recently. And certainly, I would say, even more in the ERP space, consistency is valued by the customer base, because you rip and replace your ERP system, average every 15 years. So it's when you invest in something, you're in it for the long term. Now, for people like me, that's great, because you acquire a client, you acquire them for decades. But if you do a good job with that criteria, but they really look at the vendor and they go, what's the consistency, how trustable are these? Because we know once we're in, we really are, nobody wants to take it out 2 years later and put something else in its place.
Exactly. I didn't realize it was that type of time frame. I always thought it was 7, 8 to 10 years, but that's a lot higher, those numbers that you're saying. Yeah, interesting.
Things like the e-commerce revolution. It's normal for us to build integrations between a kind of online e-commerce. Things like EDI integration is just A1 normal now. And once you build all those integrations, and you got daily orders flowing in from all your best customers,
to break it, right, would be just a shambles.
Yes. You can run up a reputational damage very, very quickly, and customers aren't as loyal as they used to be. A quick search from Google will give them 3 more suppliers, and so everybody's passionate about maintaining service quality. Absolutely correct, but what it means is that they're more cautious about change.
Yeah. So I know this MVP show has taken a little turn, and that we're talking more about the product than being an MVP. But it's the first time I've probably had a detailed conversation with somebody in the space that you're in. What are you finding? You're doing a lot of rescue, or do you do them where perhaps other partners have not been able to deliver to the standard the client was seeking, and then you've had to, if you like, unpick what's there and put something back together for them?
I think historically that was, there was almost a specialist market in rescues. Actually, you've seen the last 5 years, Microsoft has driven a lot of consolidation in the partner community. And that's been really good for quality. So there's less about now than there used to be. Everybody's had to raise their game to stay in the game. And I think that, that's been great. Microsoft Business Central is the one, there's no accreditation currently. There are no exams around Business Central. They're promised, but they're not here. So actually anybody who can transact CSP can transact Business Central now. First time for the last kind of 18 months. So actually we're starting to see that that curve is starting to dip a little bit, and we're seeing more rescues than we have for a while. But it's it's the office partner who's perhaps, dare I say, seduced by a nice big subscription, delivering it, and then going, actually, I don't know, I can't make this do what the client wants. And the client typically goes then and finds somebody who can.
So that's so on par with what my career was in that Dynamics CRM space, in that partners would see that they could transact the license. They would say, oh, it's a bit of software, just let's run the exe file and let's get it installed, put it on some SQL and whatnot. And then, of course, it was so much more than that. And or .NET developers going, hey, this is just a .NET application, let's write some code and do something with it, not understanding, how Microsoft had created a separation and you couldn't, inject the database and things like this. So it's interesting that that's now, going full cycle and potentially happening again in the BC space.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how far it goes. I mean, Microsoft is driving a lot of partner-to-partner activity at the moment. So, they're encouraging Office partners to partner up with a Business Central or a Dynamics partner all up. They're doing exactly the same in the sales engagement, customer service space as well. And I think that's a shrewd move in terms of, clients, as you know, don't have a lot of patience. And they kind of want you to deliver, or at least have confidence that you will deliver to a roadmap that's agreed fairly quickly.
Have you found you have had to defend your ground when it comes to AX, for so long, or, what they call finance now? Because, for across my career, it was always like, NAV is kind of like, the bottom of the market. But as soon as a company has done $1 million, you should really have them in, on AX. And I was like, is that the defining thing, the turnover of the business? It seemed very low.
It's crazy. It's a crazy way to define it. And actually, as both products of Business Central now scales arguably better than it ever has done. They've re-platformed it. I think what Microsoft have done with that is they've taken the historic two-tier nav product and they've made it a proper modern web-based application. That's pretty epic. Preserving the IP on the top of it. So, but it is hard. I mean, look, back in the mid 2000s, I certified in AX because it was such a competitor that we felt we needed to have an AX practice. And then 2012 came out, and I looked at the writing on the wall and thought, Microsoft are really taking this up into the proper enterprise, looking at their plans for it. And that wasn't, we didn't compete with the Hitachi's, DXCs of this world. We're a national player, not an international player. So we decided we would specialize in what is now Business Central and exit the AX space. It is interesting. We do compete with it, but actually the client fairly quickly makes up their mind what is there. And it's almost a mentality. I describe really sometimes Business Central as the more agile product because it does what it does and you can make it do something. I can sit here and make it do it very quickly. I think F&O is the more kind of waterfall project where you have to do things a little bit more carefully and at scale. And so it depends how the client wants to approach it more than actually their size these days.
Yeah, totally makes sense. What's been the best thing about being an MVP for you?
I think that's hard to pick. But I would say probably the access within Microsoft, the recognition that it gets you within Microsoft. People who are outside your product group still take you seriously. when you say those magical three little letters. So
yeah, so true.
that gets you information that allows me to do my job better, because I can, in terms of the strategy I can deliver to a client without breaking my NDA, can be more long term rather than short term.
Okay, let's wrap up with some quick fire questions. These are about life in general. They're not specific to business or MVPdom, just to put you on the spot, though. Are you ready?
I'll try. Yes.
Okay, would you rather would you rather have a cook or a maid?
A cook.
Mm-hmm. What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives?
Visit New Zealand.
Oh, have you done that?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I took 10 weeks off and came and spent it, started in Auckland, but South Island, New Zealand was just epic. So,
amazing, right?
Yeah, just, really good. So I'm not blowing smoke when I say that. It was a stunning place to visit. So I'm envious of where you live.
I love it. What was the last foreign country you visited?
I was in, let's work this out, foreign country. Scotland doesn't count, right? So it would be Germany.
Germany. I think Scotland does count. My wife and I have debated this a lot. Is it still a country even though it's part of the United Kingdom?
Well, here in the UK, it's getting a fairly contentious topic right now because, we're coming up to maybe another vote in the not too distant future, but we'll see. We keep doing these votes. I think we should ban them personally, but there you go.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
That's a tough one. It certainly wasn't anything about beauty. I
was going to say, is it the deep azure blue of your eyes?
No. I don't know the answers to that question. I'm as a bashful Brit, I don't really compliments. Perhaps I just don't register them. I don't know. I get a lot of comments. If I had a claim to fame, I might just be the tallest MVP because at 6'10" and a half.
Gotcha.
So 2 meters
wow.
10.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. That is cool.
I duck under doorways, and so normally that's where the conversation starts with kind of like, what's the weather like up there, or mind your head is kind of what people say to me. But it's great. It gets you remembered. It's done me a lot of favor.
Very good. If you could eat only one meal every day for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, can I be really impolitically correct right now and say steak?
Yes. Nice. I'd go for bacon, but what's your favorite board game?
What's my favorite board game? Cluedo.
Mm-hmm. Cluedo. And with that, James, we are done. If people want to connect with you online, what's the best place for them to find you?
Probably Twitter is one of those places that I try and visit really regularly. So James Crowter, just do a search for that and you'll find me.
Hey, thanks for listening. Have you heard about the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge? It's free mentoring that I run for a period of 90 days each year. More than 200 people enrolled in 2020, and I'll be opening, in fact, I've opened registrations for 2021 right now. So if you go to nz365guy.com/90daymc, so that's 90daymc, 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, or just go up to the website, you'll see it in the menu there. Sign up and let's, if you want to take your career in a new direction or find direction for it, this will be a well worthwhile 90 days. It's all virtual, online, and 100% free. Anyhow, for this episode, remember, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/179. See you next time.